Hi there, old man Steve here. You know, I've talked about my granddaddy before. His name was Steve. I was named after him, but he was Barnyard Steve. He, back in the early days of the 30s into the 40s, he had a radio program. He did animal impersonations, and you know, that sounds kind of silly today, somebody doing animal impersonations, but back then, that was really great entertainment. I mean, they didn't have TV, they didn't have all the stuff that you see today. He had a large following of kids, and he'd get fan mail. I have stacks and stacks of his old fan mail, and he even auditioned for Walt Disney Studios, and they hired him, but he decided he didn't want to go live in California. He didn't want to leave his home in Texas and his family. So he never went. But he did travel, and he did do a little bit of vaudeville, and he was around Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and New Mexico, all in that area in the South. He traveled and did programs at schools, and he was quite the entertainer. And he went by Barnyard Steve. And I found out just recently he also did a recording, and back in 1928, I think it was. And on one side of the record he does his animal impersonations, and on the other side he does a square dance call-in called Arkansas Bill Green, which I think he wrote. I haven't been able to find out any information on it. Nobody in the family ever told me that he did a recording. Maybe they didn't know. But I thought that was interesting. And then if you want to hear it, it's on my website. You can go there. But the story I wanted to tell you was when I was, as later in life, when he quit entertaining and everything. And my mother said, your granddaddy was just a vagabond. He just went from one job to another. He just never really had a job. She said he was just a kook. She said, you remind me of him. And it got me to thinking that if YouTube had been around in his day, he probably would have been on YouTube. So anyway, I'm carrying on the family tradition of entertaining, I hope. But the story I want to tell you about my granddaddy was I would go spend the summers at his house with my grandma. We all lived in Dallas, and they lived over in Oak Cliff, which was quite a drive at that time. But Granddaddy had an old car, and this was like in the early 40s, I guess. So I don't know what kind of car it was. Probably an old Ford, probably a used one. I'm sure not a new car. And we would go to the store or something. I'd go riding with him, and he'd drive right down the middle of the road, down where the white line is. He'd drive right down it. And I'd say, Granddaddy, I don't think you're supposed to do that. And he said, yeah, that's why they put that line there, so you can go right down it. And as he's driving down, cars are coming the other way, honking at him. I can still, to this day, remember riding with him and being scared to death because we was driving right down that white line, right down it. He thought he was supposed to. He probably wasn't a very good driver either, I don't know. But he was a character, and I remember him. I have fond memories of my granddaddy. And of course, when he passed on, I got all of his scrapbooks and photos and all that kind of stuff. The only thing I didn't know about was the recording, which is very interesting to find out that your grandfather did a recording. And nobody in the family ever talked about it, so maybe they didn't know. My mom and my dad are both gone, and there's nobody I can ask. So, but I found it by accident on the internet. That's what I like about the internet. One day I Googled him and it came up. Oh well, there you have it. Just a little bit of history of me and my granddad, or my granddad and I, or my granddad and me. Anyway, I guess I get it from him. I don't know. You may not find this interesting, but I thought I'd share it with you anyway. I'll see you next time. Old Man Steve out.